What does it take for us to build workplaces and a world that is fit for the future? A question that plagues many a leader and many an organization. How do we learn from our experiences? Are we shaping ourselves and our workplaces to be fit for the future? What does it take to invest in people and nurture success? How do we ensure that our investments in diversity, equity, and inclusion are delivering to the intended goals? Are we seeing the very invisible responsibility that most employees carry, that of being caregivers? What does it take to build a caregiver friendly workplace? Are leaders caregivers? What can leaders and organizations learn from caregivers and their experiences? How do we create safe spaces that enable inclusion? Is this something that is holding, especially women, back from the C suite? We are delighted to bring to you a series of conversations around the idea of building future fit corporates.
Jaya Jamrani, who is a marketeer and storyteller by what she calls herself. Hi, Jaya.
Hi, Bhavana. It's fantastic to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
So let me tell you a little bit about her. Jaya is a storyteller at heart, observant by nature and loves to create new challenge status quo to quote unquote get more. We will get to know more about that, no pun intended. She strongly believes in getting better ROI of resources. Ruthless planning, systematic management, business efficiency drive is what drives her. Um, she finds technology and digitization as trusted partners in driving innovation excellence or even better efficiency and ease. Jaya loves exploring the diverse behaviors and needs of people. Her work philosophy is do what you love and love what you do, karma follows. Jaya is also a travel enthusiast, an amateur blogger, supports the cause of endometriosis. Interesting. With that background, Jaya, tell us what your bio doesn't tell us about you.
I think pretty much that. I think what the bio doesn't tell you is my current status right now. I am working on a book, Bhavna, and I took a year off from my corporate life to be able to sort of explore a couple of my creative interests. I just came back from a fabulous mindfulness retreat in France, and like I was telling you earlier, that my cup feels really full. So I think I'm in a very happy and peaceful place, and hopefully the book should be out soon before it's time for me to go back to my very exciting work life at Castrol. Like you said, I am a marketeer at heart, and I think one of the reasons why I enjoy my work so much is also because it's so much about people and people energy. And I think that's what I'm trying to pour also out into whatever creative pursuits I'm trying these days on my sabbatical. Thank you very much. I think I'm really delighted to be here.
So tell me, how do you associate with the idea of caregivers or caregiving, and therefore caregivers are you?
Interesting. You said that we are a changing demographic, and I think it's not okay for a woman to reveal her age, but I kind of turned a milestone birthday a couple of years back, and that's when a lot of our friends started realizing that we indeed are the sandwich generation. We are in a part of our life where we are taking care of our parents, sometimes even grandparents, because life expectancy in India is improving. And then, of course, most of us decide to have kids or pets. And then, in that, somewhere, I think we forget to take care of ourselves. And very recently, at the retreat that I was in, it was very fulfilling to know that one of the tenets of mindfulness, which Thich Nhat Hanh talks about, is the fact that it's very important to take care of yourself first to be able to provide to anybody. And one of the reasons I really feel what you're trying to do here is so powerful and so important is also because um, I have had a lot of health issues that I have sort of overcome, and I have seen the struggle of my husband, my line manager, sometimes my team, um, wanting to help but not knowing how to help. And that's where I feel that it is not always the intent or the availability of support for caregivers. Sometimes it's the right direction, the right format, and also sometimes a trustworthy source that they can rely on, right? And I felt that is why it really connected to me, the whole idea of almost caring for yourself as an individual, as a soul, as an atma, whichever level you call it. And then more practically, to be able to really make that experience of being there for somebody a bit more easier and less painful as we see it. So that's why I got really excited, and I'm really happy that this has taken a shape and form today. Really, really proud of what you're doing, Bhavna.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Jaya. It has been good to catch up, and I remember a long time ago when we first interacted to now that you are taking a sabbatical. What does taking a sabbatical from a corporate job mean and look like? And what does that mean, from an organization or from your standpoint, both?
So I must say that. I think it's first of all, I'm very grateful and fortunate to work in an organization that looks at an individual as a complete self. And I think when we talk about our conversation on caregiving, I would talk about this whole concept of allowing someone to be able to bring their whole self to work. And I'm really grateful. I mean, it just happened over a conversation with my husband, and I said, "Look, it's time for me to take the next role." And XYZ, and you know how we all get thrilled by the idea of a promotion and the next big thing happening. I said, but somewhere, I just feel like I'm not getting too excited. He said, is it because of the role? I said, no, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something else brewing in me. And I've been wanting to write for the longest time. It is one of those things that I used to do, and making stories and looking at people and wondering what's happening behind in their minds and hearts and souls. Uh, so it's very funny because I went with a post-it in my hand, and I had like a full sort of pre-read to talk to my boss saying why I want to do this and la 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 la. And he just made it very simple. He said, "You want to take a year off? Take a year off. It's not a big deal." And obviously, all of us have such fears, right? What's going to happen of my career? Are people going to think I'm lazy? Are people going to think there's something wrong with me? I'm just being honest. Those questions do come to you, but the fact that you have your organization backing, and it's not just my line manager, I mean, even very senior leadership, the way they kind of encourage me to do this for myself and fill my cup. And I think it also comes from a place where, the organization looks at employee um, well-being beyond just the immediate here and now, right? To say that if the person is able to really fill their cup and come back rejuvenated and motivated, then the kind of quality of output and the kind of creative pursuit, in my case, hopefully, that I'll take back to my work is going to be excellent. But having said that, I think it's a lot on the way, the kind of response I got from the organization that sort of prompted me to take this. It's been fantastic. Also because I had thought that it's going to be very slow and it'll be like a pause, and it's not a pause because there is so much that one wants to do in that 1 year. So I started my sabbatical with a creative writing course because I thought there has to be a bit of a science behind how I do it. And then I've been traveling. I went to Japan, and then now I was in France. So it's fantastic, and I've been meeting a lot of people, and few of the things that you do when you just step away from what we see as the rigmarole of the daily life. You realize you could do it normally as well. You could go and meet your old colleagues from a past life. So I think that's one thing that stayed with me. And the second thing is that it's very possible for one to be able to um, change gears in a brief period of time. And I'm I'm supposed to be back at work sometime end of the year, and honestly, there is a part of me that's looking forward to that whole people energy and creative energy, and that gives me the deadline to be able to finish my book and move on to my corporate life back again. So it's been fantastic, Bhavna. And I really value the fact that my organization has been able to give me that space to be able to, allows me to bring my complete self back to work, right, with full energy and rigor. So that's fantastic.
No, I'm absolutely. I'm extremely proud of my association with Castrol as well, and I do think that the organization has given me a lot. I have learned a lot, and I'm so glad to see some of these practices. I do think that. I'm curious, and now that you're on the other side, I can ask you, which is that it's not something that every individual is entitled to. You must have earned this.
I don't know how to answer that. I really don't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but as a leader, if you were
yeah,
to look at your team members,
yeah,
I would think that you would want many people to think about it that there are certain things that are certainly privileges
yeah,
and one could get access to them. I love the fact that you had an idea, you went and spoke your mind and explored the possibility.
yeah.
Having said that, I'm not sure that anybody and everybody would have access to it, and rightfully so.
Hmm.
I think we have to create our credibility. We have to have that stature,
Yeah,
and it's not an entitlement. It is a privilege given, and that makes it even more precious, right?
yeah, yeah. No, and I also think, the how do I put it? The conviction with which you go back to your organization and make a request, and then of course you need to have a plan, and you need to say when do you want to come back. And you're right, it's not just one part of looking and opening a policy paper and saying, look, the policy says I'm eligible for a sabbatical, so I need a sabbatical. There are
Yeah,
other aspects to it, right? And
yeah,
like I said, even as an individual, you wonder whether, will this break do something to my career? Will I get the right opportunities? So there's a lot of background that needs to happen, in terms of my career conversations with the relevant people. Do I have the right network? And I'm just being upfront. I mean, one wonders whether in 1 year will things change? Will there be roles for me? Will there be people? Will leadership will? So I do think, yes, having spent a little bit of longer time, it's been a great run at Castrol, and I think that helps. But what also helps is you to have a clarity of thought in your mind, saying, "This is my plan. This is what I want to do," and to speak to the company to say that when I come back, these are the kind of roles I want to do, and this is the timeline, because you're giving them enough time to plan things back for you. Yeah, you're right. A little bit of conviction in yourself is required to be able to take this move.
yeah. See, I'm drawing an analogy to, let's say there will be circumstances, and usually women certainly have the circumstances in terms of parental leave
Yes.
and having to take a break. And
Yeah.
you and I have spoken extensively about supporting young women in
Yes.
organizations.
Yeah.
I do believe that it's fantastic.
Yeah.
One of the reasons for I know for sure for having you in the team was with the hope that you will be in a leadership position at some point.
Oh,
But
thank
there
you.
are, there are so many points of failure, so to speak,
Yeah. Yeah.
in anybody's career,
Yeah.
and more so in a woman's career.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that this conversation could throw light for many other young women
Yeah.
about saying that, I do want to be in the leadership position.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is as much about organizations
Hmm.
just saying it's not just the responsibility of the uh, woman,
Hmm.
it's also the systemic support that needs to be
Yes.
provided.
Yeah. It is a collective. I agree.
Yeah. So the analogy for the sabbatical that you took for yourself and therefore writing your book could actually be applicable for caregiving, for any other responsibility,
Yeah.
that I like to take a time off.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, absolutely. No, I think this question comes to me very often, Bhavna, and you're right. Because somehow, unfortunately, even in India, how much ever we have progressed, the default caregiver in most cases ends up becoming the woman, and I mean, this is how it is. If you have a unwell parent, it's expected that the daughter-in-law, the daughter of the house, will take care, and so on and so forth. And of course, especially with childcare, it's my favorite topic on how there are certain responsibilities that only a mother can or should be fulfilling. I think दो तीन चीजें two three things come to mind, and this is my own learning over the years of being a mother, taking care of my own health. I've had 5 surgeries for endometriosis, so you need medical break and then recovery and all of that. And similarly, seeing my husband in terms of being a great partner, in terms of and it's not just care, not just physical caregiving, right? In terms of being there, sometimes I still remember I had a failed IVF cycle, and I just did not have the wherewithal in me to go to work that time. And emotionally, I needed my husband to be around, and for him to go back to his organization and ask for a week off.
Yeah,
I think two, three things come to mind. One is to have very strong work ethics. I mean, for me, that is like the bare minimum, basic right to work, caregiving or not. And I feel that that very simple policy of honesty, the best policy that we were taught in school, goes a very long way, because how you work, even when no one is watching, is what takes you a very long way. And you were talking about leadership positions. Incidentally, never in my career, people don't believe it when I say it, have I raised my hand and said I want to do a leadership position. I have just raised my hand and said I'm going to do the best possible of what I have right now. And there are a couple of roles in my side that I would want to do next, but that's about it. And I feel that may or may not sound ambitious, but I feel that if you are able to give your 100% and be able to really get the most out of where you are right now, things work out well. So very strong work ethics, being valued for what you bring on the table, automatically puts in a green on your employee report card. Let me put it like that. So to my mind, that is like a threshold that starts. I think the second thing is also to be able to build what you stand for as an individual, right? So what is unique to you in the organization? What do you bring which is very, very different? And hence, what does the organization value you for? Okay, so it could be a subject matter expertise. It could be something that is very soft in terms of being an empathetic leader, having very insightful realizations of what motivates the team and being able to lead powerful teams. But I think it's very important to be able to build your own brand, not in an aggressive, putting yourself out there all the time way, but be very mindful in terms of what are some of the values that you are bringing to the organization that are very, very strong skill sets of you. Now, what that does is not just an external messaging to say that I bring a certain skill set or a certain quality which is very unique to me. It also builds your own conviction and confidence to be able to ask of the organization help and support when you want it. So it's very important for you to know what you're good at, and be very, very firm. We hear of this term called imposter syndrome. It's almost become like a fad. I think I said to some quorum a few months back saying, I think women, and even more so Indian women, are probably have a gene in them with imposter syndrome, and somebody needs to find a medicine to be able to undo that gene, because you will see more men being able to raise their hand to say I'm ready for this, or I can't, there is no one better than me to do this. I don't see a lot of women being able to, and I don't mean in a very revolutionary, aggressive way, but just to be able to, say that, look, I know what I'm great at, and I have that great conviction in me to be able to do that. So I think it comes from a basic level of great work ethic. Second is being able to build what you stand for, and be very clear in terms of what skill sets and quality you bring unique. when that builds in your own conviction is when you're able to then ask for help and support, you know. I mean, now of course I have a large team, and it's very visible for me to see how different people require different help. But you know,
Mm.
I had just joined the organization, I was new, I didn't know anybody, and I had a search. I mean, I was feeling very, very conscious, saying, okay, you know, it's just been a year and I'm on a medical leave, and how am I going to take care of myself, etc. But I remember, and I know you were there at that time. I still remember the call you made to me at the hospital. It's so vivid in my memory, to say that, look, you know, work will happen, and and you just take care of yourself. And probably those are the moments that also made me fall in love with the organization, with the work, with the people that I work with. So I think as individuals, women, especially because you asked me that question, I think it's important to have a lot of conviction in your work, and for that you need to work hard, uh, however and whenever, and build works to be able to have that conviction that you're good enough, and then ask for help. I think we don't ask for help as women. The other challenge, you know, the flip side of the gender story also is that because, especially in our country, caregiving is such a feminine responsibility. I have seen a lot of time men actually feel very awkward asking for support when they have to be caregivers, you know. Um, I mean, I remember when my husband wanted leave from work, and he said, I don't know how to explain to them what is endometriosis. And, you know, if I mention uterus to my boss, I don't know how he's going to respond. Or even, even to say that I have an unborn daughter and, you know, I need to just take care of her for a week, they find it very, very difficult to be able to ask for help in this so called feminine caregiving dominance culture that we have. I think that is also something that men need to start working on, saying it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to ask for help. And I think I remember a leader I had, Bhavna, who actually um, walked up to all of us, yeah, the top leadership of the organization, like top 30, 40 of us in a room, and he said, you know, the last quarters have, he was new and he was settling in, and he said, it's been a bit too much for me, and I'm feeling as if I'm losing my sleep. And I feel like I have just run a marathon, so I'm going to just take off for 10 days, and I'm just going to go and take care of me and my family, and etc. etc. I mean, I thought that was very, very powerful message from a leader to say that I need to fill my cup. I remember somebody in my team whose wife had a miscarriage, you know, and I could tell how awkward he was to come and even tell me about it. And you know, so then the role of the manager also comes in place. So how do I make sure that the person is feeling comfortable to be able to talk about it, and kind of almost encouraged him to take a week, 10 days off with his wife, and what are the available support systems, etc. So I think it is both ways. There are certain hopes in people's mind because of how the society has shaped caregiving. um, but I feel that's where, you know, the role of a line manager starts coming in. So how do you listen to the unsaid? How do you look at the employee in the team who's probably always upbeat but not in his or her spirits? And that is where the connection, the check-ins, the emotional connect that you have with the team comes in a long way. And I feel that culture of empathy is not just limited to caregiving. I think it's important for organizations overall.
Yeah. Um, you've covered so much, and there are so many things that one could go deeper into. And I'd like to go into the idea of building managerial
Hmm.
capability in your team.
Hmm.
And I do think that I have a vivid recollection of a time at which it was a challenge for us to ensure that there were enough women in the sales and marketing function of the organization. And we did so many things to make sure that we built the pipeline. Yeah. So, there were brand managers in the marketing team that were hired with a certain energy, and then we got sales trainees in a large number, and then there were sales managers to say that, listen, you need a certain critical mass. You
Yeah.
need for it to happen. Having said that, this was so long ago, Jaya, and it is true not just for the organization that you and I share, but also for many other organizations,
Hmm.
where a lot of people have made a lot of effort
Hmm.
to hire women, bring women back after maternity, etc. And yet it is a leaky pipeline
Yeah.
to the board. And why is it important for women to reach leadership positions and to the board is because you really want that the decision making in the organization is done in diverse ways.
Hmm.
So I'd like for you to look at your career, your experience, and that of many other colleagues, men and women both, to comment on what makes women not reach leadership positions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting question. In fact, I was in Germany with another colleague of ours, and we had this long debate because obviously, her worldview is a bit different now than my worldview. But I think it's changing. So first of all, I mean, I'm delighted that we started that journey at Castrol when you were around, and the numbers are fantastic, not just in terms of hiring but also retention. So a lot of girls and women that you would have hired at that time, including myself, have are doing really well and have grown at great places. So thanks for that. I think very recently, I'll share with you interesting story. I was There was this lady I met during a hiring drive that I was doing in my team, and while she didn't make to the team for various reasons, but I was really impressed and happy that she reached out to me last month. I mean, I would have met her 2 years back, and she said, "Is it okay if I can talk to you?" And the question she was struggling with is the question a lot of us have struggled with, saying that should I go back to work after having my baby, or should I just take a few months more off? And surprisingly, in her case, her organization, was offering that if she wants to extend her maternity break for a couple of months, that would be fine. And I mean, it made me smile when she said, Jaya, I don't know if they're doing it out of empathy or they think I'm not good enough to come back. And I was smiling because it's how we women are so wired to start, doubting ourselves on how things don't fall in place. And I asked her, I said, have you asked your line manager this exact question? Just ask your line manager that why is it because you really care for me? Or is it because there is some other organizational constraint that you think it'll be better I come later? And obviously, I mean, the answer was that the line manager was really concerned. So sometimes I also feel that it's difficult for men because it's very difficult to draw the fine line between genuine empathy and empathy because the organization wants it a certain way. I remember there was a point in my career when a certain line manager of mine walked up to me and said that I can see you are going through a very bad phase of life. And Bhavna, I went through surgeries after surgery for endometriosis. And and it's only much later in life when you become older you realize that the gentleman was meaning well, because he said, would you want to take something which is not as strenuous as your current role, and just take it easy for a year or two and then come back? And I don't know how we are. We start self-doubting ourselves and saying, am I not good enough? So I think couple of things I can reflect on my own journey, and also of so many other women that I've seen around me, not just in BP and Castrol, I mean, across my,
I
yeah,
just wanted to I just wanted to come in to say I have a similar story.
yeah. So, yeah, and I think most of us have gone through that where, even if somebody had genuine empathy and care, um, we didn't know how to read into it. And maybe also for the men somewhere it is about how to put it, right? Like there is a way to be able to put it and communicate. And I've always seen that um, that lack of communication sometimes creates a lot of question marks in both sides. even in the line manager thing, does she really want to come back? Is this the end of the career? Blah blah blah. I think two things, and it's not just having children. I'm telling you, at every transition of your life, if the line manager is willing and wanting to support you, there are chances, especially if you are younger, you will see that support as being a question mark on your capabilities. So I think that's an important piece for women to just take things at face value and ask if it's not. I think two things I feel we women need to do more of is one, we work hard a lot, okay? And I'm not saying men and women work hard. Everybody works hard if they want to do well in their careers. But I just feel that the art of being able to put ourselves out there and be able to talk about our work and be able to network about how we do and what we do. um, that ability needs to be nurtured more in women, you know and it's not always about having chai sutta with your male colleagues or going out for drinks. It's also being able to put out an email saying this is what we did and this is the output, or sharing and talking at lunch table about some of the work we do, because I do feel a lot early in my career I used to not forget about selling myself. I used to undersell myself and say, oh, this is not a big deal. So I think it's important for everybody, but more so for women to put themselves up there, out there, and talk about what we do. The second is to have allies. I mean, I remember when you used to head the HR function, and I used to find a huge sounding board in you in terms of, is this the right time for me to have a child? Do you think the organization will support me? Do you think XYZ, this role? I think it's important for women to have and build allies in the organization, and as you grow in the overall network, whatever your area of field is. I mean, I know some fantastic marketing women around, and I find um, there is a certain strong strength of energy that comes to connect with women and to be able to share. And of course, I mean, I don't think networking should only be gender. It is very important for you to have networks across your area of expertise. And I think the third thing is to be able to ask. One of the things that I have learned in my career, whether it is the most recent sabbatical that I asked for, or at times I have wanted to work agile, or I have. So you ask not just for the support, but you also ask, how do you think that if you have any question marks around my arrangement of work with you, how do you think we can mitigate those question marks? So I had a bit of a difficult pregnancy, if I may put it like that, and I was on bed rest. But I think the fact that I could ask my line manager without taking it for granted that I mean, I am pregnant. What do I do? I can't come. But I think the conversation to have with him was to be around. Look, I understand I'm not in office, and these are pre-COVID, pre-Teams days when you don't have virtual meetings. So how the questions to ask then around agile working or remote working were around, what would be your concerns around my working? How would you know that I am doing what I'm doing, supposed to be doing? Because obviously you don't see me working long hours. How will you make sure that I'm included in team conversations and critical decision points? I remember you and I were having this conversation some time back where somebody had to leave the meeting, and the decision were made after she left the meeting, which could have happened the next day, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's also about asking, saying how, why, when, what, and at times, if required, because I have also worked in global teams and I have worked extreme funny hours, morning, evening. So very important to have transparency. If you are going to take care of somebody, I was with a friend in Germany right now, and she has a dog that she takes care of, and funnily, she had put it on her calendar saying dog walk time, dog food time. And it's perfectly okay to have that transparency. But at the same time, then you're kind of required for people to also know that you're available late evening, early morning, whatever works for you to be able to make that call. I think it comes from just being out there and just not having two versions of what you're trying to do, and just say this is the reality of my life. My work is as much the reality of my life as what I have to take care of. And I'm very comfortable putting it out there in open and having a conversation. I also think that especially people who work agile need to also have check-ins very, very regularly, not just with the line manager, but also with key stakeholders. Because especially in a function like sales, marketing, I think most functions you require a lot of interplay. And I have seen that when people work remote or people work agile, sometimes those connections are lost. And I feel the not so obvious connections in organizations are actually the ones which spark creativity and innovation. I mean, only when a marketer sits with somebody in supply chain is when they figure out what a new packaging shape can do. So those networks and those connections are important, and one needs to make time out of that of your entire schedule. I think the fourth bit is that if you are not feeling fine, especially when caregiving can take an emotional. So all of the things that I spoke about are more about your physical presence to take care of someone, and hence asking for agile and remote and etc., early leaving, early going home. I think the psychological part, no, Bhavna, the emotional part of it, unfortunately, is something that is not spoken about at workplace as much as one would like to see. You know, uh, it's about being able to take care of your sick dog. It could be your mother. It could be your in-laws visiting for a surgery. I mean, I have been in that position. I remember as recent as my last role when my mother-in-law was in town for a surgery and I had a board meeting. So you make those choices then, right? And you figure out a way to work around your schedule and probably attend some parts of the meeting where you think decision making will impact you. Um, but I think it's important to be able to ask for emotional help, and which is where I feel that leadership doing walking the talk, leadership raising the hand and saying that I have a certain responsibility at home for which I am not going to be able to make time, or I need a certain arrangement at workplace. I think that really changes the narrative of how we see managers as a caregiver in the working environments today. And I would strongly encourage people who are in impressionable leadership positions with large teams, especially, to be able to show that vulnerable side of you, both physical availability being given at home as well as emotional availability. I mean, the way I see it, there are three levels to the whole caregiving support organizations can give. The first basic one is your policies and things which are written in pen and paper, which is to say what kind of medical support you give, is there an agile policy in place, what are the working agreements, blah blah blah. I think the second part of it is about uh, sensitization of leadership and line manager, right? For them to be able to really understand how to emotionally provide that space and support to the organization. And I think the third one is the tip of the pyramid yet, and I'm hoping organizations like you can help support that, is being able to provide trustworthy resources to be able to take care of the well-being of that employee. I think that's how I see um, the world sort of evolving. And other thing to remember is, like you said, the demographics are changing. So most of us are two kids, maybe some of us are single kids. So imagine the entire responsibility of older parents, sometimes even grandparents, coming on just one person. And which means that it could be that in a year you may need not one leave to take care of your mother's surgery. You may need 5 leaves to take care of your different family members at different point of the time. Yeah. And after having all of that, you may need some time off for yourself as well to fill your own cup. And that's the last bit I feel of caregiving, which a lot of times we as leaders also tend to ignore, because we feel that we've done our responsibility by giving all the support the person needed to take care of his sick mother, and we gave you leave and we give you a child, blah blah blah. And then I mean, I remember somebody in my team, father was terminally ill, And I could tell that he was going through a difficult time, and he went and worked out of his hometown for the longest time, and we worked around it. That's fine. It's also important to talk about those cases to the larger organization,
Yes.
so that people understand that this is the culture of the organization where you have the support to be able to bring your whole self to work, whichever way. And then Bhavna, unfortunately, his father died. He was no more, and I could tell that it's a very it's a very mixed bag of emotions that happens when somebody's been terminally ill. And I remember walking up to that person and saying, you know what, you should just take the week off. Everything is done, all the formalities, everything, all rituals are over. Take a week off with your wife and son and just go somewhere peaceful. And the gentleman had like a look of terror and shock on his face. He said, what are you saying? I am in bereavement. I said, yeah, which is all the more reason that you need to just take a week off and give yourself time. And I can tell you that when the person came back, I mean, we talk about ROI, and I'm a big fan of return on investment, not in a transactional way, but I mean, at some point, all of this needs to make sense to the organization. Somebody sitting somewhere will ask us that why are you spending so much money on, or making so many, leeways into the employee well-being. I think there is a lot of merit in that. I have in my career, both for myself as well as for people who have worked in my team, seen that the ability for someone to get the support and resources where they are able to bring their 100% to work, whole self, and by that I mean whether it is agile, remote, take a break, blah blah blah, but when they are working, their mind is 100% there, is exponentially going to give the advantage to the organization. And I don't mean it in the form of that person giving their best and hence output. The retention that you do, the kind of talent that you are able to attract and retain, the kind of productivity you unleash in a mind which is not stressed. You imagine if you are always under the stress, oh, I need to catch a bus, it's time for me to reach home. Would somebody have put the drip on my mother? Vis-a-vis saying, fine, I've taken care of all of that. Now I'm going to open my laptop and sit down and work on that presentation. Obviously, the productivity multifolds. And last time, if you remember, I was telling you that somebody needs to crack a way to be able to put this in a formula. Because I genuinely feel that the value of empathy and care in organizations is sometimes unfortunately undermined. And I mean, I feel very proud to work for BP, where one of the values is care for others. And that's something I really feel proud of. But I feel that that whole embodiment of the corporate world, to say that it not everything be cutthroat and aggressive, but also about care, empathy, can really unlock a lot of value for the organization.
So that's fantastic. You've kind of covered the spiel, and I love it because I would have asked you that if you are such a believer in ROI, what do you think is the ROI of what's in it? I mean, it feels like a moral, nice to do thing, or the fad of the season to say, let's have more women in the workforce and let's get women into decision making, etc. But women are impacted, and organizations then have to invest in additional resources.
Yeah.
You're used to operating in a certain way.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, many people and the organization needed to shift gears when a certain critical mass of women joined the
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a lot of investment. There was a
Yes.
lot of investment of time, money, energy, ways of working, etc. Was it worth it? Does it show up in the bottom line? Because that's really the question, really, right?
Well, I hope it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, no, but I think, Bhavana, seriously speaking, there is a lot of talk around diversity, equity, inclusion, and I'm really glad that people are talking about diversity beyond just male female, right? So I'm happy that there is a lot of talk around it. I think organizations seem to have largely, let me put it like the largely organizations seem to have seen value of diversity in the form of gender. Okay, because I mean, I'm hoping when they're looking at so many women leaders, so many women in startups and in CSR, and the kind of value creation that's happening because of that, I think there is enough and more conviction being built around gender. I think it'll take some time for organizations to see that beyond women as a gender, hopefully. And I'm seeing that a lot, for example, in the UK and especially in Europe, you see that very senior people from the LGBTQI community and adding a lot of diverse value to the organization. But I think it'll be some time before we are able to see caregivers as diverse demographics in the organization. And it's actually very ironic because when you talk about gender, and let's talk about women, right? At best 30, 40, hopefully 50% in some organizations. But if you were to just do a cut off demographics of caregivers, at some point 60, 70, 80% of the organization would have caregivers, isn't it? So I wish there was a way to be able to look at caregivers in some format of diversity, and have that conversation to say that if there is a segment of your organization which at some point will require support, uh, should we just start having that conversation now? Because these are people who you can't look at their clothes and how they look and say, okay, this guy is a caregiver, this guy is not, right? So it's a very silent demographic, so to say. But it's high time we start talking about them because you have hired them and you don't even know what they are going through on a daily basis. And hence, that metric of extraction of value, let's say, is not being even measured anywhere. Yeah, I mean, you look at women and you say 40% women in Salesforce, 50% women, and there are companies now which fantastically have 100% women women-run factories, and then we are measuring output and we are measuring all sorts of metrics to say, see, this is possible. I wish there was a way for us to crack, and maybe Bhavna, this is something you should work on, is to say that if at some point in 60, 70, maybe 80% of your working force is actually a caregiver, are we doing something about that? And that's probably a silent demographic. It's not as visible and out there as gender.
So I'm going to just hold that thought and certainly point noted, um, and take a look at your career in the sales and marketing function as a leader, very motivated by communication and innovation. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yes.
Okay. So if you are motivated by the power of communication and the power of innovation, what are some of the competencies that an organization or individuals in an organization need to have in order to be future fit? Because that's the theme, right?
Mm. Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
what would you build in the organization?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. The first one that I have seen a lot of value in terms of technology, and COVID almost thrust that onto us, is to be able to have remote communication programs, platforms, ways to connect teams. And I think it's become fabulous because even at BP we have a 60-40 work culture, and I have not seen that come in the way of teams coming together globally or even within the country. So I think technology, and what we do with technology to be able to give people that kind of space, time, is probably, to my mind, like the first basic part of how we begin. The second piece, no, I think it became a buzzword sometime at the same time when we all started from working from home, was agile, and it took me some time to really absorb agile beyond what it means in English. To say that, are we as organizations very comfortable not looking at work pieces as assembly lines? So like say Bhavna is coming to office and Jaya is at home, and both of their working hours are different because Jaya is a caregiver. Then is Bhavna comfortable working agile and not saying that no, Jaya, unless you don't make slide 1 to 10, I will not be able to work on 11 to 14. So, very simplistic put, are we really as organizations able to break work into such agility that everybody has the sort of freedom to be able to do that? You may be a morning person, I may not be, right? So it makes no sense for me to wake up in the morning and make slides if I make better slides at night. I do, by the way. So I think that agility as a concept, and it goes much much beyond into product development, into marketing, communications, all of it. So that can be really work agile as an organization to be able to unleash the best in everybody, and obviously that means value creation for the organization. So those two are, to my mind, systemic support and systemic culture building activities that future fit organizations can do. The third piece is a bit softer, and I feel how diversity, equity, and inclusion almost became a clarion call. I think it's time for us to add empathy to it and really make uh, empathy the really cool cultural behavior to have in organizations. I felt very proud when BP called out care for others as one of their pillars of vision and mission. But I think it's beyond that, because when you are empathetic as a leader, you are able to crack open the best of everybody's potential. I mean, uh, if imagine the employee who had just lost his father had to come to office the next day and sit through a meeting vis-a-vis that person kind of filling their cup and then coming back after a week, I can tell that person added a lot of value then. So I think empathy also then becomes very relevant for customer centric organizations. So if you really care about people, then it's not just employees, then it's your customers, your stakeholders, everybody, your environment, the ecosystem that you work in. And that culture really unlocks value which is beyond here and now, because then you start creating an impact in the society that you work in, the ecosystem that you work, and that doesn't happen overnight. So if I actually tell a lot of marketing networks, when I meet them and people say, what does it take to be a great marketer, I said actually it is empathy, because if you are genuinely deeply caring about your consumer, and you're somebody who's able to take time out and listen to them deeply, then you will be able to create value which is long lasting. And that empathy for customers or external stakeholders will only come when you practice it internally with your own employees first, right? So I think that it's high time that we have a clarion call saying, that is the next thing that organizations need to really go behind. And I feel stuff like customer centricity and everything else that we very passionately speak about will just come out of that. It will become a culture and a second skin to organizations.
So, on that count, do you think people who have caregiving experience bring in these competencies?
100%. 100%. And it is actually at two levels. I think the first piece is a more practical way of being able to handle crisis. Okay. Because I feel that when you're taking care of somebody else, whether it is someone very, very unwell, mentally, physically, it requires a certain level of calmness and peace within you to be able to handle a situation like that. And which also means that you need to learn to multitask, right? So, at a very fundamental level, I feel that if you have seen that kind of crisis, unfortunately, in your life, and you've been able to manage through it, you have learned the skill set of being able to multitask being able to think through crisis and keep calm during crisis. I mean, as a leader, I would think very, very strongly on these values for somebody who has had, a history of caregiving. I think the second piece is that they bring with them not just the empathy of providing that same experience to their team members or their people that they work with, their colleagues, etc. But I also feel that uh, it is an experience that allows them to be able to share their experience in a manner that the person who may go through it may not go through it again. So you learn from their experiences, which is exactly the reason why we say that women who are pregnant and have kids look up to women who've been there, done that.
Yeah.
You learn from other people's mistakes. So I genuinely feel that if somebody has been a caregiver and especially has trained themselves to be a caregiver where they are taking care of themselves. A lot of us are become caregivers, but then we forget to take care of ourselves. So we may not be the best caregivers available.
Yeah.
But if we have been trained to manage caregiving in a fashion which is almost a skill set, like a life skill, then I do feel that those people, when they go back to work, add a lot of value to their teams, the colleagues, uh, to be able to manage such situations better. Yeah. There is
Great.
also there's also practicality, Bhavna. You know, so if you put in your society group saying, my mother is having a knee surgery, the kind of tips and suggestions and inputs apart from the equipment that you would have asked a message for, I wanted a walker, and I said I need a walker because my mom's going through a knee surgery, but women came and told me, oh, no, no, you need a caretaker for her, you need somebody to come and do physiotherapy, and you need a certain level of stockings, and you need to find time for yourself, etc. So I think those insights are invaluable, and I don't see those conversations happening way too often. I must tell you, I was very vocal about my hysterectomy, and not because of anything else, but I just felt that in India, even now, women's health is a taboo. If you tell somebody that I got rid of my uterus, they sometimes don't even know how to react to it. Okay, they're like, okay, right, fine. But when I spoke about it, it was not just women from who were younger to me or women who were junior to me in terms of work levels, but actually a couple of my colleagues' wives reached out to me to say that I'm going through this and what to do. And I of course spoke to the wives, but I also spoke to my colleagues in terms of how they need to take care of their wives, right? Because it is a time when they need them the most. So conversations overall around caregiving, I think, are important. But if there are trained caregivers who've been there, done that, and have sort of managed physically and emotionally the whole process, I think they would be fantastic managers who would go back and add a lot of value to the organization.
And to their homes, like you just
Yes,
said.
100%. Yes.
Yeah, imagine becoming more wholesome people in their personal lives
Yeah.
because you have a certain environment at the workplace.
Yeah.
How valuable is that? I'm getting gooseflesh. Um, but I think that this is the time also for me to do a little plug and say that Caregiver Sati provides support groups and information. And I do think that connecting with other caregivers, experienced caregivers, for knowledge, information, emotional support, but also other caregivers to just simply know
Mm.
that you're not alone can be a very powerful resource. And I do think that many times we underplay the value of this.
Yeah.
You often assume that you should just know it simply because you have two X chromosomes doesn't make you a good caregiver. And or anything else, simply because you are the ideal son doesn't make you a good caregiver.
Mm.
There, caregiving is a skill, it is a know-how, and modern urban caregiving is very challenging.
Yes.
So it is important. There are a large number of resources on our portal. and many of which are free access, and I would encourage many people to access it.
Yeah.
Um, Jaya, you are in a leadership role. You are an influencer in the networks that you are a part of. You're a senior colleague for many people. You look at organizations in a nice, unique way, and I would like for you to comment on the fact that organizations have a fiduciary social responsibility. What do you think could be some of the ways in which organizations can contribute at a social level
Mm-hmm.
to build and support a care economy?
Hmm.
Because a robust and thriving care economy will enable that productive workforce.
100%. I agree. No, so I think the way I see it, Bhavna, at an organizational level, there are two key stakeholders for the organization. One is, of course, the employees. I think we've spoken at great length about how I feel that caregiving employees actually constitute 60, 70, sometimes even 80% of your employee base, and it is a silent demographic. So I think it's important for companies to identify that demographic and then build the basics in terms of policy support, in terms of whatever is the ways of working agile, and then the third piece right on the top is the culture, and which is where also access to a lot of resources and support, exactly to what caregiver Sati gives, right? So I'm really happy and I'm really hopeful that a lot of organizations will dip into this set of services that you have. But I think we've spoken a lot at length around employees, because that's where the work begins at home. And I think it's also a lot about empathy as a culture to be built. And I feel a lot of organizations seem to be moving in that direction. So hopefully, with time, people will understand that it is not just being caring for your employees, but caring for employees who are caregivers, right? I think the second aspect of it, which is the CSR and society at large. Now, a lot of organizations, including mine, are deeply invested in making a difference in the communities that we work, right? Whether that is trucking for Castrol or mechanics, and similarly, different communities have different. Now, what's interesting is that currently uh, caregiving is still a very elite conversation to be had, right? I think we are privileged to be able to ask for that help and even look for somebody like caregiver Sathi, and then be able to, it's not just about affording them, but also just the awareness, because we have access to information. So I think a lot of impact that organizations can make, because they do work at grassroots level as a part of their CSR facilities, is to take this whole concept of caregiving and caregiver support into smaller micro communities. Now if you move into lower pop strata and rural, etc., where women are these standard caregivers, but also given the economic boost working, getting out of the home, I just feel that I don't think in their existential survival any of this is coming to conversation. So I feel that organizations could make a great impact in taking this whole conversation of caregiving and support of caregiving into micro societies and micro organizations that they work with in their own sector. Because I feel in the urban side of things, there is a lot of need of awareness and access, which is a lot that if there are organizations like you, then corporates need to dip into that and make that accessible. But then there is more pop strata where both awareness and access is very very poor, and I hope that organizations can start thinking about some of those conversations, because I have worked in rural quite a lot, Bhavana, and I have also worked a lot with women in rural, um, who do local arts and farming and all of that. In this entire rigmarole of, as it is being ignored overall as a gender, I think the entire responsibility of caregiving, it falls onto them now, both financially as well as physically. And I don't think there are organizations that are talking about their well-being and what have you. Suicides, for example, in rural, in women, depression, anxiety, all of these situations seem to be very elitist as terms, and then they manifest in either taking their own lives, or getting away from the life that they were trying to build. So whichever way, I feel that that conversation has not happened. It's far from even being touched upon, and I feel organizations could do a lot there to be able to create an impact. And it need not be a breakthrough from whatever CSR programs that they're already running for those communities. So it's basically just expanding the scope a little bit more and making it available and relevant for them.
I think you have given me a few ideas
Mm-hmm. Int-
there. That's
I am so
fantastic.
glad. Yeah,
And I think that's a nice pitch to have actually, which is to not look at it as a whole new idea, but to look at it like this is the work that you're doing in the communities that you're invested in. Just add this dimension to it.
yeah, yeah,
And I believe very, very passionately and very strongly that given the number of hours that most of us spend with our workplaces and in organizations have a huge role to play in the social structure, social narratives, the design of society, and it feeds off each other, right?
yes,
We gain from what is happening around us, but we also so the fact that organizations put their foot down to say we will hire women has led to many things changing in society in general, right? How can we look at
yeah,
practices at workplaces
yeah,
that take caregiving beyond gender?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think the answer is in the question. You take away the conversation of gender completely. And make all your policies very very gender neutral. For example, instead of calling it a maternity and a paternity break, just call it a child care break, right? And a lot of countries I know have the option of the husband and wife deciding how they want to use their childcare leaves between themselves. So it is also sort of delinking gender to the whole piece in the policies itself, irrespective of male female. So if anybody needs bereavement leave, for example, or anybody needs agile to work with, it need not be a gender related. So you don't define that you will get the privilege of agile is not only to pregnant women, for example. So you remove all of those clauses of agile to say that anybody who requires um, to be taking care of anybody in their family, including their pets, for example, have the privilege and have the benefit of agile policies. I think it's also about walking the talk. Uh,
Yeah.
um, like I said, the leader who came and said that he needs a week off to just take care of himself. Or I have had male colleagues who would want to take leave to take care of their wives, their mothers, their parents, and to be vocal about it and create a culture of talking. I think that is also very important for men to come forward and talk about it, and to share that culture of it's okay for men to ask for help. I think they need more help than they ask for. Uh, I think the third piece, Bhavna, is a lot around building a culture of check-ins. Now if you speak to people in the organization, uh, it's very important, male or female, as a line manager, to check in with your team very regularly. And those check-ins is when you will realize that somebody has something going on in their house, and then be able to open conversations of help and support, and offer whatever your organization has. So I think delinking gender from the policies, having more walking the talk moments from leadership, and thirdly, just check the whole culture of empathy and check in with your team and then be able to figure out where and how you can help is probably what I feel will remove gender slowly from the conversation.
I believe that this is a conversation that we should keep alive.
Yes.
And I do think that there are many, many points that we can go further with the conversation. And I look forward to many more opportunities when you and I can talk about this. I am delighted to see what you are doing with your career and your life. Thank you for your time. Any closing remarks?
No, thank you very much, Bhavna. Like I said, I think the piece is that I feel caregiving is not like a privilege to be looked at. I think all of us, as basic human and then as leaders, need to have empathy at the core of what we do. And with that empathy comes a lot of awareness and access to caregiving and support to people who are caregiving.
Yeah. So, on that note, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bhavna. Take care. See you. Bye bye.